pinstripe suit sat quietly across the other side of the table. I looked at him as the woman grasped my shoulders. He simply sat there, his leg crossed over, his arms resting peacefully on top, and that grin plastered across his face. Wide, toothy, no fear, no hesitation, absolutely competent and confident of his victory. For a moment, the woman's words shook me as the doubts began to race through my mind. Could I really do this? Maybe she's right. Maybe I should just give up, go back. His experience stretches far beyond mine. Why would I ever think I could win? How could I possibly believe that someone like me could actually beat him? She's trying to save my life. Maybe I should let her. Just go back. Cut a regular deal. It might not be optimal, but I could still get great profit from it. It could do good things for my life. No, I thought. I bit down on my lip, hard enough that I could tell that I had pierced the skin. You started the game. Play it. Defeat is not an option. Simply being outmatched doesn't mean you shouldn't play. If one wishes to succeed in business, then you have to take risks. I shook free of the woman's grasp, slammed my hands down on the table as I stood from my chair. No, I said angrily. This is my game. I'm going to play it. I am Reginald P. Worthington I. I am descended from generations of businessmen, and I refuse to cower before even trying. I will play, and I will win. The beautiful blonde woman had a shocked-looking expression on her face. She began to back away from me slowly, one hand still sliding across the table. She didn't even stop when her hand caught the tray holding the teapot and the glasses, sending all of them to the floor, shattering, spilling tea on it. Your name is Reginald P. Worthington, she said, her voice trembling. The look on her face seemed overwhelmed, and from the other side of the table, I began to hear once more the chuckling of the man in the pinstripe suit, building to a roiling laughter. The beautiful blonde woman looked over at him, her look of absolute shock changing to anger, rage. Have you lost your mind? She screamed at the top of her lungs. Of all the things I have ever heard you do, of all the things that I have seen, this is madness. Do you have any idea of what you're dealing with? The forces you're tampering with. Despite your power, you are not a god. You have to end this madness now. The man in the pinstripe suit didn't bother to acknowledge the woman's screams of anger or any of her statements. He just continued to laugh that insane laughter. And suddenly, as if from nowhere, I felt a gust of wind and saw a bright light begin to emanate from the blonde woman. Golden light and wind circled her. Ascallion, emerge! She shouted, a look of rage still plastered across her face. And from the golden wind and light that circled around her, a massive, absolutely massive, golden entity began to appear, clad in golden armor that shimmered brightly, emanating light from every crevice. Standing at least 50 feet tall, its footsteps shook the ground, and without a single word or form of notice, this Goliath golden titan struck out, swinging one of his massive fists towards the other end of the table. I kicked away from the table, falling back in my chair and rolling backwards. What was going on? I thought she worked for him, I thought to myself, trying to scramble backwards away from the table. And just as the giant Goliath's fist was about to make contact with the man in the pinstripe suit, it stopped, impacting some invisible force, stopping the force of its fist. A massive burst of wind, warm with heat, flowed out from the point of impact. My clothing and hair blew in the wind, and suddenly, the golden behemoth was frozen in its place, unmoving, unflinching, and still the man in the pinstripe suit laughed. The golden giant still frozen in its place, the pinstripe man stood up from his chair. Now, Victoria, he said. You and and I both know that that doesn't work here. We are in the Ring Eternia, which means no intervention from outside parties. Victoria, the blonde woman, looked furious. You can't do this, she said. This is madness. There are levels of power that even you are held to account to. Forces in this universe beyond even your power. A balance that must be maintained in all things. You know this. So why? Why this madness? I don't understand, she announced. The man in the pinstripe suit simply straightened his tie, brushed off his jacket, and looked at the blonde woman. You don't have to understand it. The game has already been set. The players are accounted for, and nobody is backing out. This game is going to happen, whether you want it to or not, Victoria. So, seeing as you have spilt our tea, why don't you just go fetch us another pot? The blonde woman looked furious. Yes, sir, she announced, clenching her jaw and storming off towards the door, the golden giant behemoth disappearing, fading into a shimmery golden dust that evaporated into the air. My heart was beating out of my chest as I sat on the floor. This was madness. I looked over to the man in the pinstripe suit. Was I really going to challenge this man? I thought to myself. I composed myself as best I could, stood back up, and put my chair back into position. I took my seat, staring across the table at the man in the pinstripe suit. How could I possibly beat him? I still had the chess piece. I could still set the terms of the encounter, but how do you win? How do you win against a master of everything? Oh, please do ignore my assistant. She does get a bit emotional from time to time, the man in the pinstripe suit said. That is emotional? I thought to myself. She summoned a giant gold monster to try to kill you. Emotional doesn't seem the best word to describe it, I thought. Then again, if he has someone that powerful serving him tea, what the heck am I supposed to do? Now, young regiment, you were thinking about the terms of our little encounter. Any ideas what you want them to be? The man in the pinstripe suit said, seeming to absent-mindedly straighten the tablecloth. I tried to clear my mind of the distractions and focus on the task of finding a way to beat a nigh-immortal master of everything. There had to be some way I could come out on top in this exchange. No, I'm getting ahead of myself, I thought. The first thing I need to do is establish what we're getting out of this. I looked across the table. Okay, so the first thing is what we're wagering. What each one of us hopes to get out of this, I said, clasping my hands on the tabletop. As far as that goes, we already have a problem in reaching some kind of agreement. The problem primarily being that I do not know enough about magic or what it's capable of to truly make an informed decision as to what best to acquire. And it feels like waiting on you to tell me every possibility seems a bit taxing, I said, looking at my hands clasped on the table. Oh, there are factors that you're not including, young regiment, the man in the pinstripe suit said with a snide grin. For example, what you're going to pay me doesn't necessarily reflect what I have to offer. I, unlike you, am a seasoned businessman with many assets at my disposal. What I'm able to offer you is merely a reflection of what you're able to offer me, the man in the pinstripe suit said, calmly sitting back in his chair. I sat quietly for a moment, thinking over what he said. Truthfully, he was right. I had no idea what he could offer me, and even the value of what I could offer him in exchange. Perhaps that's something that the chess piece could help me resolve. But how? I thought to myself. Wait a second, maybe I'm overcomplicating this. Whenever you make a business arrangement with anyone, normally, there's always paperwork, things that let you clearly see the definitions, the lines of what you will and won't get in exchange for what. But I can't exactly ask for that because, as he said before, knowledge itself is also a resource, something that I have to barter for. And then a thought occurred to me. I have the chess piece. I could make that a reality, I thought to myself. But then, that still leaves how to actually beat him. His assistant, as he called her, definitely wasn't lying. He's a master of everything. There's no way that I'd be able to come out on top in any kind of challenge, regardless of whether I test skills or intelligence. Strategy doesn't seem to matter. So, how do you beat someone who will beat you at anything? I sat there for a few moments, quietly thinking to myself, trying to figure a way to make this work. While I was thinking, the pretty blonde woman, who he claimed was named Victoria, re-entered the magical doorway, holding a new tray with a new set of cups and a teapot. She briskly walked across the floor to the table, placing the tray on it, pouring 2 cups of tea, handing one to me and the other to the man in the pinstripe suit, all the while still carrying that same look of fury on her face. "Will that be all?" she announced to the man in the pinstripe suit. "Or would you like some scones while you're destroying the universe?" she said snidely. "No, that'll be all, Victoria. You may be excused," the man in the pinstripe suit said, after which the blonde stormed off towards the door, slamming it behind her. "It's so hard to find good help these days," he said, chuckling and giggling to himself. I quietly sipped my tea. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be expecting, but the tea was extraordinarily good. I had expected to maybe have something a little more magical to drink, but a good cup of tea is a good cup of tea regardless. And I had never actually had this blend before. It seemed like having a nice English cup of tea in the midst of all of this insanity felt like it grounded me a bit, as if that little taste of normalcy, of reality, helped bring me back from the absurd nature of the situation I was in. So as I quietly sipped my tea, gently staring over at the other side of the table as the man in the pinstripe suit did the same, contemplating how I could get the best of this arrangement, it suddenly came to me. It was so simple. Why didn't I realize it before? The thought was so funny. I almost spit my tea back into my cup, having to contain my chuckle under my breath. "Something funny, young Reginald," the man in the pinstripe suit said, finishing his cup of tea and setting it to the side. "Oh, nothing at all," I said. "It's just, I finally figured out how to beat you." The man in the pinstripe suit laughed boisterously. "Beat me, you say? Well, if you do, you would most definitely be the first. I can't wait to see how you pull that one off, Regiment P. Worthington. So I assume that means you've decided on the terms, how this is all going to work. Yes?" I finished my tea, setting my glass to the side, with a big smile on my face. "Yeah, actually I have." The magical door into the room opened once again. The blonde strolled back in, stepping only a few feet away from the table, and simply standing there. She looked at the man in the pinstripe suit, still with a furious expression on her face, but nonetheless standing in a proper position. "As long as you're going to go through with this, I might as well watch, see the outcome, I suppose you could say," the blonde woman said. "As you wish," the man in the pinstripe suit replied. "Now, young Reginald, I think time for pleasantries has come to an end. Decide the terms, and we can begin making our deal." I looked down at the chess piece in my hand, clasped it tightly. This is all or nothing, I thought. Either I win and I get what I need, or I lose. Basically, everything. It can only go one way or the other, but it's going to go my way. I know it, I thought to myself, still gripping the chess piece tightly. "Okay, Pinstripe, I've decided the terms of our arrangement, and crossing his arms over his lap again. Here's how it's going to work, I announced. Condition 1. Since this is, of course, a business arrangement, we have to set the terms of what I'm going to be giving you and what you are going to be giving me in exchange. But I think simply hoping that you offer me the best of what you have is a little one-sided. So I've come up with a fair way to make the arrangements without actually having to be a master of magic myself. And of course, it's completely fair to you as well, because it's a deal, a business deal, and it only works if you accept the terms. An index will be created. This index will basically contain all magical and non-magical assets possessed by each individual. I, as the challenger, will decide what I intend to wager. The index itself will be capable of distinguishing magical value as well as non-magical value. So basically, I'll get a big book with everything about me in it. Everything that I could possibly offer you. I'll then decide how much of what I possess I'm willing to wager or exchange. And the magical index will take into account everything that I decided to wager or exchange, and then allow me access to view everything that you have that falls within the market value of what I'm wagering. So, I don't actually get to see any of the things that you possess, or could possibly give me, until after the game has already started. And even then, I'll only be able to see what amounts to a balanced offer for what I'm giving you. So, if for example I were to wager a year of my life, I would only be able to see things from your index that were equatable to the magical or physical value of that year of my life. Of course, this is only the established order of payment, what each of us will get in exchange for participating in this little game. As far as the business deal itself, that is much simpler. It's going to be all or nothing. Basically, the winner of this game is going to be the only one who profits. If you win, you get everything that I was willing to wager or barter to you, and you don't have to give me anything in exchange. But if I win, the same rules apply. I get to claim anything within the value range of what I was willing to wager. All or nothing. Both the blonde woman and the man in the pinstripe suit looked at me wide-eyed. The man in the pinstripe suit grew a hearty smile. Oh, I think you're forgetting something, young Reginald. You still have yet to actually tell me how the business arrangement itself is going to work. What's the challenge, Reginald? Well, it's simple. In any contest, regardless of whether we match strength or skill or ability, the odds are you're going to win. Beating a nigh immortal in anything would be a difficult task, so we're going to void it altogether. It will be a game of chance between you and me. No magical influence whatsoever. Simply random chance. A gamble. Winner literally takes all. I extended my hand, holding the chess piece outward. Do you accept the terms? I announced. The man in the pinstripe suit smiled widely. Laughing a maniacal laugh. Oh, this sounds interesting. So much fun to be had. I haven't been this excited in decades. Of course I accept, young Reginald. Now, choose your game. As you wish, I said, smiling right back at him. The game will be a dice roll. High number wins. One roll, one outcome, one winner. I slammed the chess piece down on the table, and as I did, a shock wave of energy emoted from it, spreading out in all directions, encompassing everything. It was like seeing a wave in the ocean, but ripples and air and solid matter. The table and the floors all had a ripple wave go through them as the shock wave passed through. And just like that, The chess piece disappeared. The game is set, the man in the pinstripe suit said, standing from his chair. Now, let's begin. Suddenly, a book appeared beside me, floating in the air. It opened itself, sitting beside me. And inside, I saw, I suppose, what amounted to me. It was crazy. It had everything about me, all listed like a set of stats or figures, like statistics and percentages. How good I was at math, how good I was at art or archery, how happy I was, how much love I had for myself, for others, the amount of years that I would be alive, even my hair, my general health was included. No detail was left out. And beyond that, magical values for everything, for my soul, for the individual energies that I produce. It was all right here, black and white in a book, the only question being what I was going to wager. The man in the pinstripe suit seemed undisturbed. He sat there calmly, as if nothing was going on. How much was I willing to wager on this game? How much could I lose? But then again, how much could I stand to gain? The more I was willing to wager, the higher the access to what he had available. I wouldn't get to see what he had until after I made my wager. So, if I put too little, then maybe what I really wanted, the things that I really desired, would still be beyond my reach, locked on the other side of a barrier, a wall of financial requirement. But, on the other hand, if I wager too much, it could go the complete opposite way. So what if I get to see what he has available? If I wager 90% of my life and die next year, it won't matter if I know about what he has. Who's to even say that what I might want to wager might be worth anything? What to do? I looked across the table one more time at the man in the pinstripe suit, still calmly, confidently sitting there, as if there was no way in any world that he'd ever lose. And just like that, I decided. I placed my wager into the book, listing exactly what I was putting on the line. And with a flash, the book closed, disappearing in a stream of colorful lights. And suddenly, to the other side of me, another book appeared, this time opening up to show what the man in the pinstripe suit had at his disposal. As I looked into the book, it was insane. There was so much here. After looking it over, it appeared as if he could match every single thing that I put on the line. So if I wanted to, I could simply get back double of whatever I wagered. But no, I need something more than that. Something more specific. Something that can actually help me. After all, the plan behind this was to be able to make an actual deal with him. This was just something I did to try to even the scales, to give me access to the things he has. If I try to keep playing this game, there's a very real chance that I'll lose. It has to be one and out. I searched rapidly through the compendium of things that the man in the pinstripe suit possessed. It was maddening. He had everything. Money, gold, silver, magical resources, magical items. Soon enough, I discovered that if I were to try to include other things, stack elements on top of each other, write in specific types for quests into the bottom, then the book would compile it in order to facilitate granting that request and what it would look like in statistical terms. And that gave me an idea. If anything were to allow me to even the scales with the man in the pinstripe suit, to make a better deal, that would definitely be it. So I placed down what I wanted from the man in the pinstripe suit. Afterwards, just like before, the book vanished in a flurry of colors and light, and suddenly, on each side of the table, in a small bead of light, appeared a single dice. I clasped the dice tightly in my hand. Well, Pinstripe, are you ready? I said, my heart beating, thumping in my chest, my mind racing. Could this work? No, this has to work. The man in the pinstripe suit smiled. always been ready, young Reginald. I just can't wait to find out how this turns out. It should be delightful regardless. I rolled that dice in my hand, shaking it up before throwing it to the table, as did the man in the pinstripe suit. Both dice rolled across the table. It was just a dice roll, and yet it seemed like the dice were just taking forever to set. What were the numbers? Who wins? The man in the pinstripe suit's dice slowed, finally coming to rest on the number 5. I looked over at my dice, still ever so slightly rolling across the table, and as its roll finally slowed, coming to a stop, edging just on the side, the cusp of one of 2 numbers, it finally fell. That tiny click, that ever so slight little tap of that dice falling, felt like the loudest noise I've ever heard in my life. My number was 6. I laughed, jumping for joy, pushing back my chair. I win! I win! I shouted at the top of my lungs. Well, would you look at that? The man in the pinstripe suit said, looking at his little 5. I never thought the first time I lost in this room would be to a 10-year-old. He said laughingly. So, young Regiment, what exactly did you wager? I smiled a toothy grin at him across the table as the magical book that indexed everything I had and everything I wagered appeared beside me. It must be something quite good if you're happy. The compendium opened up, the pages unfurling to show the man in the pinstripe suit exactly what I wagered. His eyes were wide for a moment as he stared at the pages, and then, again as before, roiling laughter. He laughed so hard that he fell out of his seat, rolling on the ground, the blonde woman standing next to the table, exclaiming, "You can't be serious!" I suppose they were surprised that I wagered it all. Everything I ever was and ever will be, every asset I possessed, put on the line in a single dice roll. That's insane, the blonde woman said. What did you get for that? I gestured to the other side, and just as before, the compendium containing all the things that the man in the pinstripe suit possessed, appeared, opening wide and unfurling its pages to reveal what I had claimed in exchange for my wager. For my end of the bargain, I had claimed 4 things. 3 labeled as construct abilities, and last but certainly not least, the magical compendium, a channel by which I, and I alone, can access any magical knowledge that refers to the learning of, performing of, and general knowledge of magic. The blonde woman was stunned. She kept her stunned expression, turning to look at the man in the pinstripe suit, still rolling on the floor in laughter. He attempted to get up for just a moment, only to see what was written in the compendium of what I was going to be claiming from him, and began laughing even harder. He laughed for what seemed like forever before finally getting to his feet, placing his hands on the table. Well, I do have to admit, it is very rare that anyone gets the best of me in any situation. But I have to say it, young Reginald, you did in fact pull a fast one. He said, chuckling still. And as per the terms of the agreement, you have won, and shall get everything on the list. Well, young Reginald, he said, snapping his fingers as a small crystal appeared in his hand. He reached across the table, placing it in mine. You know, most would probably be satisfied with what you just acquired, but I have a strong suspicion that I'm going to be seeing you again very soon. You'll find that when it comes to businessmen, we always want more. He raised his hand, snapping his fingers. and nothing actually happened. The man in the pinstripe suit looked puzzled for a moment. The blonde woman exclaimed, "Sir, we're in the chamber, Eternia, remember?" "Oh, silly me, I almost forgot. Reginald, you have to give me permission to transport you where you want to go." "Oh," I replied, getting a little sidetracked with the fact that I pulled one over on a nigh-immortal deity type being. "Yeah, I suppose just send me back to my room?" "As you wish, Reginald." He snapped his fingers, and just like before, I was back home in my own room. I looked down at the palm of my hand, saw the crystal sitting there, glowing ever so slightly, and a wide smile creeped across my face. Now this is where it starts.